Join me on this cosmic journey,
They were just staring at
exploring the vast unknown.
Of an unidentified flying object.
I'm your host, Astrid,
me.
and welcome to Beyond the Stars, Otherworldly Encounters. (1948) was a year marked by significant upheaval and momentous events, both on an international scale and especially within the Americas. The end of the Second World War led some nations to work towards lasting peace, while others were already sowing the seeds of future conflicts that would plague the globe for decades to come. The societal landscape was also evolving, with many noteworthy developments in popular culture and entertainment, providing Americans a respite from the political tensions. Columbia Records introduced the LP, a long-playing vinyl record, revolutionizing the music industry by allowing for longer playing times and improving sound quality. The iconic British sports car, the Jaguar XK120, was unveiled at the London Motor Show, setting new standards for vehicle speed and design and symbolizing the post-war technological optimism. The first Polaroid camera was sold to the public, introducing the concept of instant photography and transforming the way people captured and shared personal moments. The foundation of the Honda Motor Company in Japan marked the beginning of what would become a global automotive and motorcycle powerhouse, symbolizing Japan's rapid post-war industrial recovery and innovation. And The Ed Sullivan Show debuted on primetime TV. This variety show would become iconic in American television history, showcasing musical talent, comedy acts, and more. These developments in entertainment, science, and industry, set against the backdrop of significant geopolitical shifts, highlight the complexity of the year 1948. It was then that something unimaginable would unfold in the night sky over North Dakota. A high-speed chase by Lieutenant George Gorman in an aerial confrontation, famously termed the Gorman Dogfight, that has gone down in history as one of the all-time classic UFO sightings. The Eyewitness. George Francis Gorman was born on October 13, 1923, in Fargo, North Dakota. He had a relatively typical upbringing, developing an early interest in aviation. He enrolled in the civilian pilot training program during his high school years, where he first got a taste of what it was like to fly. Following his graduation in 1942, young George enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, where he quickly gained experience and several commendations for his skills as a fighter pilot during World War II. Although just shy of his 25th birthday on that fateful night in 1948, the young man had already gained significant life experience. By then, Lieutenant Gorman was a World War II veteran, a lieutenant in the North Dakota Air National Guard, and was reintegrating into civilian life as a student of aeronautical engineering at the State University, maintaining a part-time job as a pilot in the meantime. Having served with distinction during the war, his skills behind the controls of any aircraft were undeniably of the highest class. On the night of October 1st, 1948, the former airfighter had just completed a cross-country flight in a P-51 Mustang aircraft and was preparing to return to solid ground when his astounding confrontation with an unknown and elusive opponent began. The Fateful Night. It was a clear and serene autumn evening, as a group of pilots were concluding their flight towards Fargo, North Dakota after a routine cross-country exercise. As the pilots approached the Fargo airport, only one opted to extend his flight, seizing the opportunity to relish the cloudless night sky a bit longer: Lieutenant George Gorman. Although a spur-of-the-moment decision like this was somewhat uncommon, it reflected the lieutenant's profound appreciation for aviation and the unparalleled sense of freedom it offered. His choice to remain airborne was driven by a desire to savor the tranquility and beauty of the night sky, moments rarely afforded during regular flight operations. It was around 9 p.m. when Lieutenant Gorman finally decided to join his fellow airmen on the ground after enjoying his solo flight. Flying high above Fargo's Dakota field, he looked down and saw a football game in progress and noticed a smaller single-engine Piper aircraft just 500 feet below him. Looking upwards, he thought he saw the blinking taillight of another aircraft flying above him. At first, but something didn't look right. So, driven by curiosity and a sense of duty, Lieutenant Gorman decided to investigate. Climbing higher into the endless night sky, he maneuvered his aircraft as close as he could to the mysterious light. But unlike the clear outline of the wings of the Piper aircraft he had seen earlier, The form of this object remained elusive, a fuzzy orb against the night sky. No matter how close to it he flew. Seeking answers, he quickly got in touch with air traffic control. The response was as baffling as the sighting itself. According to the control men on duty, only Lieutenant Gorman's Mustang and the small Piper aircraft were registering on their radar. The plot thickened when the other pilot, Dr. A.E. Cannon, confirmed that he and his passenger had also witnessed the enigmatic object dashing furiously through the sky. Now, with confirmation that the light couldn't have been coming from another aircraft, Lieutenant Gorman informed the tower that he would try to follow it, compelled by an urgent imperative to understand what it was he was seeing. Unfortunately, even in pushing his machine to its full power, he simply could not catch up to this luminous ball accelerating away from him. It wasn't just fast, but agile, capable of making rapid maneuvers that were seemingly beyond the capabilities of conventional aircraft. Despite the lieutenant's best efforts to close the distance between his plane and this unidentified flying object, the UFO consistently outmaneuvered him. It moved so erratically and with such astonishing agility that Lieutenant Gorman suddenly found himself narrowly avoiding collision. First, the pilot was forced to dive. Then the light passed directly over him before making a sharp U-turn and coming back in his direction. Just when it seemed like they were going to collide, the object shot straight upwards into the sky. As the P-51 Mustang embarked on the steep climb in an attempt to follow it, Lieutenant Gorman found himself in a dire situation when his plane stalled at 14,000 feet, hanging precariously in the sky while the mysterious bright sphere was rapidly getting away. Meanwhile, down below, the two air traffic controllers were glued to their binoculars, watching this spectacle unfold. With their own two eyes, they witnessed the lieutenant's aircraft and the enigmatic orb dance across the sky together in a series of breathtaking maneuvers, like a high-stakes aerial ballet. Dr. Cannon hurried into the air traffic control tower after landing his small aircraft, confirming that the light moved at an unbelievable speed, far exceeding that of his own plane. This was no ordinary object. It was something else entirely. A perfectly shaped, luminous sphere, its edges sharp against the night sky, devoid of any haze or trailing beams.
It was about 6 to 8 inches in diameter, clear white and completely without fuzz at the edges.
Gorman would later report.
It was blinking on and off. As I approached, however, the light suddenly became steady and pulled into a sharp left bank. I thought it was making a pass at the tower.
Suddenly, the airborne chase escalated into a high-speed pursuit that spanned the night sky, beyond the sight range of any onlookers on the ground. For an intense 27 minutes, Lieutenant Gorman dedicated every fiber of his being to chasing the otherworldly light. In fact, despite his exceptional level of physical fitness, he even momentarily lost consciousness due to the sheer velocity and force exerted on his body as he attempted to mirror the object's abrupt maneuvers. His furious pursuit drew his aircraft 25 miles outside the familiar lights of Fargo. The object, silent and devoid of any visible exhaust trail or odor, remained just out of reach, a phantom in the vast expanse of night. Finally, acknowledging the futility of the chase, and perhaps the limits of his own human endurance, Gorman had enough. He turned his aircraft around and headed back to the safety of Hector Airport. The immediate aftermath. Military personnel and aviation experts quickly mobilized to assess the situation and gather information about the unusual incident. Upon his return to base, Lieutenant Gorman was debriefed by his superiors, who listened attentively to his detailed account. In a sworn statement made to his commander, Gorman declared that he was
convinced that there was definite thought behind its maneuvers. I'm further convinced that the object was governed by the laws of inertia, because its acceleration was rapid but not immediate. And although it was able to turn fairly tight at considerable speed, it still followed a natural curve.
Meanwhile, ground crews inspected the aircraft for any signs of damage or malfunction, in hopes of shedding some light on the incident. However, no evidence of mechanical issues or external interference was found. Mysteriously, the P-51 Mustang appeared to be in perfect working condition, in spite of having stalled at 14,000 feet. Experts from various fields were called upon to analyze the details of the incident and provide their own theories as to what had transpired. First, aviation specialists scrutinized the flight data, finally admitting that whatever Lieutenant Gorman had encountered it didn't align with the capabilities of any known aircraft at the time, fully defying conventional aviation logic. Then, radar operators at Hector Airport were questioned. They confirmed that unidentified blips had been detected on their radar screens during the time frame of Gorman's sighting. This fact provided an independent corroboration of the object's presence in the airspace, reinforcing the notion that Gorman had indeed encountered something beyond conventional explanation. Then, psychologists were called upon to evaluate the lieutenant's mental state. Given the extraordinary nature of the incident, there were concerns that he may have experienced hallucinations or delusions. However, the psychologists found Gorman to be rational, coherent, and mentally sound. Finally, investigators from Project Sign, later to become Project Grudge, and ultimately Project Blue Book, arrived in Fargo to question the eyewitnesses. Project Sign had been founded by the U.S. Air Force less than a year prior to investigate reports of UFOs and other similarly unexplainable phenomena. They passed the P-51 Mustang through a Geiger counter, noting that the level of radioactivity was significantly higher than that of other planes that hadn't flown for several days. That was interpreted as evidence that Gorman had flown in the vicinity of a nuclear propulsion object, but they wouldn't rule out the possibility that it could have been a Canadian aircraft or a weather balloon. As news of the encounter spread beyond the confines of the military base, reporters descended upon Hector Airport, eager to interview Gorman and the military officials involved in the investigation. Gorman declared to a local newspaper,
"I've never seen anything like it. If anyone else had reported such a thing, I would have thought they were crazy."
Speculation ran rampant, with some suggesting it could be a top-secret military experiment, or even visitors from another world. In response to the growing public interest, military authorities released a carefully worded statement acknowledging the strange nature of the encounter but stopping short of providing any definitive explanations. However, although initially cautious in their statements to the public, the military privately acknowledged the significance of Gorman's testimony and the corroborating evidence. Their expertise in aviation and combat operations allowed them to assess the encounter from a strategic standpoint, considering factors like potential security threats and technological capabilities. While they wouldn't confirm an extraterrestrial origin of the UFO, their validation added credibility to Gorman's account. Government investigators regarded him as an entirely credible witness, noting that he did not make the impression of being a dreamer. He reads little and only serious literature. He spends 90% of his time hunting and fishing, drinks less than moderately, smokes normally, and does not do drugs. He appears to be a sincere and serious individual who was considerably puzzled by his experience and made no attempt to blow his story up. Lieutenant Gorman, for his part, mostly expressed astonishment and curiosity, recounting the experience with clarity and detail to anyone who asked. He was amazed by the silence, speed, and maneuverability of the enigmatic object, emphasizing that its capabilities were beyond the technological reach of the time. The investigative trail, corroborating the unbelievable. Following the government's investigation, which culminated without definitive conclusions, Lieutenant Gorman remained publicly reserved, neither fully endorsing nor outright dismissing the findings. His silence on the matter, however, was not indicative of agreement. The weather balloon theory ultimately prevailed in official reports, particularly because the Aerial Meteorological Service revealed that it had dropped an illuminated weather balloon 10 minutes before Lieutenant Gorman first saw the airborne object. The report concluded that it was the maneuvers of Gorman's own aircraft that caused the incredible movements made by the weather balloon. The idea of a nuclear device was also disregarded. The radioactivity detected on the fuselage of the fighter jet was ultimately thought to be a secondary effect of the high-altitude flight that took place. Dr. Travis S. Taylor, an aerospace engineer and author of Introduction to Rocket Science and Engineering, indicates that at the time of the events, the United States was implementing Project Mogul, which consisted of launching high-altitude spy balloons equipped with very powerful microphones, aimed at determining whether the Soviets were conducting surface nuclear tests. Taylor points out that the famous UFO incident in Roswell, New Mexico, was also rationalized as being a balloon from Project Mogul, but whether that was a legitimate explanation or merely a justification aimed at placating the public, we'll never truly know. Taylor also asserts that any lingering ideas about the flying object being simply another aircraft is the least plausible theory of all, as it would have been easily recognizable to Gorman. Earlier that year, he points out, Chuck Yeager made his famous flight in the Bell X-1, in which he broke the sound barrier.
A craft like that would have been very obvious to a P-51 pilot. Gorman would have known what he was looking at. The X-1 looked like an airplane.
Media coverage and public interest. News of Gorman's encounter spread like wildfire both locally and nationally. Headlines proclaimed the sighting of a flying saucer by a reputable pilot, generating an intense frenzy of other UFO sightings across the country. Behind closed doors, Gorman expressed doubt over the legitimacy of the government's investigation. He was quoted by friends, and eventually the Bismarck Tribune, as saying he was never convinced by the official explanations, suggesting a belief in something beyond conventional understanding and the possibility of a cover-up. By the end of the following year in 1949, the accounts of several other UFO sightings had been collected by writers who had traveled across the United States to talk to eyewitnesses. Those testimonies were adapted into stories and published in a lengthy article by Donald Kehoe in True magazine. The article, titled "The Flying Saucers Are Real," began strikingly. Kehoe boldly claimed that after 8 months of thorough investigation, he had uncovered evidence suggesting Earth was under the watchful eye of intelligent extraterrestrial beings piloting mysterious flying saucers. Kehoe aimed to back up his claim by dissecting 3 hallmark UFO encounters from 1948. The first was the Gorman Dogfight. The second was the Mantell incident, in which a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot named Captain Thomas F. Mantell tragically lost his life while in pursuit of an unidentified flying object. And the third was the Childs-Whitted case, in which 2 commercial pilots, Clarence Childs and John Whitted, reported a close encounter with a bizarre torpedo-shaped object while flying over Alabama. By analyzing these cases in the context of his own experience with the Marine Corps and 25 years of observing aeronautical developments, Kehoe critically examined the presented facts, challenged the dismissive conclusions of the Air Force, and laid out his own interpretation. He enriched his argument with a selection of technical details, lending a compelling and authoritative tone to his narrative, all aimed at supporting his central thesis, that these encounters represented genuine interactions with extraterrestrial intelligence. Considering the fact that True magazine had a reputation for publishing the truth, this article hit the reading public like an atomic bomb, garnering nationwide attention throughout all forms of media: newscasters, radio hosts, TV coverage, magazines. It was absolutely everywhere, putting UFOs and True magazine back in the spotlight with one of the most widely read and discussed magazine articles in history. If you'd like us to reproduce The Flying Saucers Are Real as a special episode of Beyond the Stars, let us know. In the meantime, it's available from AUDIOBOOKSNOW using a special discount code below. As the years passed, Lieutenant Gorman's life, for the most part, reverted back to normal. He re-enlisted in the military, dedicating himself to a distinguished career that saw him retire as a captain in 1969. Throughout these years, the encounter hovered in the backdrop of his achievements, occasionally resurfacing in quiet discussions with colleagues and friends. Gorman maintained a nuanced stance toward the incident throughout his life. As time went on, the Gorman Dogfight became a topic of intrigue and speculation among UFO enthusiasts and researchers, a testament to the enduring mystery of what he encountered that night. Even in retirement, Gorman rarely spoke of the incident publicly, choosing instead to let the legacy of that night's events speak for themselves. Despite his reticence, those close to him knew that the experience had left an indelible mark. His cautious approach to the subject underscored a deeply personal struggle between his experienced reality and the public's skepticism, a battle he chose to fight in silence. The Gorman Dogfight has since been used as the basis for a multitude of other works in literature, film, and TV. The event has managed to deeply anchor itself in our popular culture, fueling our imagination and curiosity about the mysteries that lie beyond our reality. The government's top-secret UFO investigations, known as Project Blue Book, were eventually declassified and published, and even dramatized in a scripted TV series on the History Channel, with an entire episode dedicated to this encounter. Although Gorman is renamed Fuller, it is fictionalized after all. If you enjoy historical dramatizations, the History Channel's Project Blue Book is a must-see, available for purchase or rent on Amazon Prime Video, or to sink your teeth into the actual declassified Project Blue Book report, as well as J. Allen Hynek's own research, published in the Hynek UFO Report, The UFO Experience, and The Edge of Reality. Check out the video description below for exclusive Monster Myth discounts. Conclusion: an unresolved enigma. Lieutenant Gorman's encounter with the flying orb of light remains an unresolved mystery to this day, a captivating example of those unknowable phenomena that we seek to explain without fully succeeding. Certainly, the declassified files of the U.S. government validate the theory of a weather balloon. But can a witness as reliable as this World War II veteran, a pilot seasoned in the exercise of aerial combat, really have confused a weather balloon with that dazzling sphere performing at a speed and maneuvering capacity that defied comprehension, one that attacked him twice before escaping? More than 75 years later, these questions still remain. The extraterrestrial origin of that mystifying presence may never be proven, the mystery never solved. But the phenomenon continues to inspire imaginative creators and audiences, scientists and dreamers alike, a constant reminder of our collective fascination with the unexplained. From the birth of the Maury Island Man in Black, to Betty and Barney Hill's shocking tale of abduction and medical experimentation, to the mutilated military officer at the Holloman Air Force Base, the mid to end of the 20th century was filled with countless tales of mystery and intrigue, and we look forward to sharing them all with you. Until then, we'll continue to watch the skies and ponder that age-old question. What lies beyond the stars, waiting to be discovered, in the outer reaches of the unknown?